You're 31 years old. Every Monday morning starts almost exactly the same. At 6:20 a.m., your alarm goes off inside a one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs about 40 minutes from downtown. You make coffee, open your phone to check your Chase account out of pure habit, then start getting ready for work. From the outside, everything looks pretty solid. Your salary crossed into six figures over a year ago. Your company matches your 401 KEK. Your credit score is good enough that buying a house in the next few years actually feels realistic. Your savings account always has enough emergency cash to survive a few months if something goes wrong. You don't spend recklessly. You don't carry credit card debt. You're not impulsive with money. Some weekends you stop by Costco to buy things in bulk like every other adult trying to live responsibly. You think you're doing everything right. And honestly, anyone looking at your life would probably think the same thing. But little things start changing so slowly, you barely notice them at first. Rent goes up a few $100s. Car insurance increases. A normal meal somehow starts pushing $20 after tax and tip. You're making more money than you were 3 years ago. Yet the feeling of relief hasn't grown at all. Sometimes, while pumping gas late at night off the freeway, you stare at the numbers climbing on the screen and find yourself wondering something strange. If life is technically getting better, why does it still feel like you're only one small emergency away from financial stress? Friday night after work, you meet up with an old friend who used to work at the same company a few years ago. The two of you sit inside a small spot near downtown talking about work, salaries, the job market, and all the usual things adults talk about when they haven't seen each other in a long time. You know he doesn't make that much more money than you do. At least he didn't before. But there's something about him that catches your attention. Not an expensive watch, not a luxury car sitting outside in the parking lot. Just a completely different energy. Calmer, lighter, like someone who doesn't need the next paycheck just to breathe normally. Then, somewhere in the middle of the conversation, he asks a very simple question. If your company laid people off tomorrow, how long could you survive before you started panicking? You laugh softly, like it's just a joke, but your mind goes quiet for a few seconds. On the drive back to your apartment, you start doing the math in your head. Rent, car payment, insurance, utilities, groceries, gas, subscriptions. Expenses that once felt small now seem to leak into every part of life, like water dripping through an old house. You realize your salary has increased almost every year, but the distance between you and financial anxiety hasn't really changed at all. And the part that bothers you most isn't the number sitting in your account. It's the feeling that you followed every rule society told you to follow, and still don't actually feel safe. A few weeks after that conversation, you start paying attention to things you never cared about before. Not motivational videos, not Instagram accounts flexing luxury lifestyles, but the way people with real wealth actually talk about money. You notice they rarely bring up salary. They talk about cash flow, equity, tax efficiency, ownership. One senior manager at your company casually mentioned during lunch that he barely thinks about yearly bonuses anymore because most of his net worth comes from assets appreciating over time. That sentence stays in your head much longer than expected. Later that night, for the first time, you open a personal spreadsheet and look at your finances the way someone might look down at their entire life from above. Your income is not bad, but almost your entire existence still depends on a paycheck landing in your account every 2 weeks. And slowly, you realize the difference between someone with a high income and someone with real financial freedom has nothing to do with who earns more. It comes down to who still has to constantly trade time just to keep their life standing still. Another night, you sit inside a coffee shop near the financial district and overhear two men at the next table talking about a duplex they just bought as a rental property. They talk about it casually, almost like they're discussing where to eat that weekend. No stress, no bragging. Just a completely normal part of their lives. And for the first time, you feel something difficult to describe. Maybe all these years, you were never truly building wealth. Maybe you were only upgrading your ability to survive inside a system that keeps getting more expensive every year. After that point, you begin seeing your life differently. Not because some major event happened. From the outside, everything still looks normal. You still go to work every morning, still sit through Zoom meetings, still stop by Walmart on weekends, still receive your direct deposit right on schedule. But the stability that once comforted you now starts creating a quiet kind of suffocation instead. You realize most of what you once called security was really just the ability to keep the current cycle alive a little longer. A higher salary makes life feel easier for the first few months. Then life quietly expands to absorb the difference. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer car, more expensive meals you no longer check the prices for. You were never trying to show off. Everything seemed reasonable. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. There's never one terrible decision large enough to make you stop and rethink your life. Just hundreds of small choices slowly pushing your cost of living higher in ways that are almost invisible. You begin understanding why people making $200,000 a year can still live under constant financial pressure. Not because they're stupid, but because modern life makes spending money to feel like you're progressing incredibly easy. Meanwhile, inflation quietly makes everything more expensive year after year. Time keeps passing. Your salary keeps increasing. But the distance between you and financial freedom barely changes the way you once imagined it would. The most exhausting part is the feeling that you're always busy without actually moving any closer to having real control over your life. Some nights you lie on the couch after work, open a net worth calculator on your laptop, then close it again a few minutes later. Not because the numbers are terrible, but because for the first time, you realize something painfully difficult to admit. A person can spend their entire youth climbing higher and higher in life, while never truly stepping off the financial treadmill they've been running on the entire time. Then you slowly begin understanding what's actually happening. The problem was never just about how much money you make. It's about where your money goes, what it's doing, and whether it continues creating value while you sleep. Most people spend years trying to increase their income, but almost no time building a system that makes their life less dependent on that income. A high salary feels powerful in the short term because it allows you to buy more options. But over time, lifestyle usually expands faster than wealth. You move into a nicer apartment. You eat at better places. You slowly get used to everything needing to feel more convenient, faster, more comfortable. And eventually, that new standard quietly becomes the minimum required for you to feel okay. That's the moment money stops being a tool for freedom. It becomes fuel for maintaining your current version of life. You begin realizing that truly wealthy people rarely live the way social media makes everyone imagine. They focus on ownership, assets, equity, cash flow. Meanwhile, many high-income earners spend almost all their energy trying to keep their lifestyle from falling backward. Time does the rest. It amplifies everything. A small investment can become a major asset after 10 years. But an expensive lifestyle can also lock you into working far longer than you originally planned. The more money your life requires to maintain itself, the harder it becomes to step away from the cycle. And maybe the hardest truth to accept is this. A lot of people are not broke because they earn too little. They're trapped because their entire financial system is built around spending almost everything they make. Then you start imagining two different versions of yourself in the future. Not unrealistic fantasies. Just small differences repeated over many years. In the first direction, life continues almost exactly as it is now. Your salary keeps rising steadily. You move into a larger apartment, then eventually buy a house in the suburbs with a 30-year mortgage attached to it. A newer car arrives after a few promotions. Vacations become more frequent as a way to recover from exhausting work quarters. From the outside, everything looks successful. But by the time you reach 40, you realize work still occupies your mind almost every day. One late-night email from your boss can still change your entire mood. The idea of taking a few months off feels more dangerous than freeing. Your income is far higher than before, but the cost of maintaining that life has grown just as much. In the second direction, you still live well, but you refuse to let your lifestyle rise every time your income increases. The extra money gets converted into ownership, index funds, equity, assets that continue operating without demanding your presence every morning. At first, the difference between the two lives feels almost invisible, but 7 years later, the gap begins widening dramatically. One version of you still has to keep running just to hold everything together. The other starts gaining the ability to choose. Not early retirement, not a luxury fantasy, just the ability to say no without immediately fearing that life will collapse. And the strange part is that both paths begin from the exact same salary, the same age, the same career. The difference is not how much money you earn. It's whether each passing year allows your money to buy more freedom or simply buys a more expensive version of the pressure you already live with today. What makes everything even more complicated is that nobody is truly forcing you to live this way. Most of the pressure comes from things that are almost invisible. You watch your friends start buying houses. Coworkers upgrade to newer cars after their latest promotion. People on LinkedIn constantly posting about their stable life in their 30s. Slowly, you begin feeling like you need to keep progressing in the same direction too. Otherwise, you're somehow falling behind. And before you realize it, money stops being just a survival tool. It becomes tied to your self-worth, to the feeling of whether you're winning or losing at life. Some days you buy things not because you truly need them, but because you're too exhausted to keep feeling deprived after another long work week. A short vacation, a nicer watch, a brighter apartment with a better gym downstairs. Those things deliver dopamine fast, but the feeling always disappears sooner than expected. Then the cycle quietly starts again. You work harder just to maintain the upgraded version of life you recently created. The strange part is that a lot of people who look successful from the outside are living through the exact same thing. They're not broke, but they never feel secure enough to stop running, never wealthy enough to slow down and breathe, never far enough away from the next paycheck to experience real freedom. And deep down, you slowly realize that maybe the scariest thing is not financial failure itself. Maybe it's spending the next 10 or 15 years running as fast as possible, only to look back one day and realize you never actually arrived where you wanted to go. Then gradually, your perspective starts changing. You stop seeing money the same way you used to. In the past, every salary increase immediately made you think about how much better you could live. Now, the question becomes, how much future time can this extra money buy me instead? You begin understanding that the difference between consumers and people who actually build wealth has nothing to do with current income. It comes down to what they do with the money left over after basic life is already covered. One group continuously uses it to upgrade the present. The other quietly converts it into things capable of creating value years into the future. You realize people with real freedom rarely try hard to look rich. They care more about flexibility. They want the ability to walk away from toxic jobs without panicking. They want their time to feel less controlled by monthly bills. They want their investments growing even while they sleep or spend a quiet weekend away. And for the first time in years, you begin seeing money as a tool for creating distance between yourself and the constant pressure of modern life. Not to beat other people, not to flex online, just so that one day you can wake up on a Monday morning without feeling like your entire existence depends on the next direct deposit hitting your account. Your life probably won't change overnight after this. Tomorrow morning you'll still wake up on time, still drive down the same freeway, still sit in the office answering emails, joining meetings, and watching your calendar slowly fill up week after week. The market will continue moving whether you pay attention or not. Housing prices will keep changing. Inflation will quietly keep making everything more expensive. Other people out there will continue buying assets, building businesses, accumulating equity, and creating systems that no longer depend entirely on their time. Meanwhile, a huge number of people will keep living with the belief that everything will work out eventually as long as their salary keeps increasing. Maybe you believe that too at some point. And honestly, that's what makes this trap so dangerous. It doesn't hurt immediately. It simply allows years to pass in a state that feels comfortable enough to avoid changing, but never free enough to create real peace of mind. Then one day you look back and realize your 30s disappeared before you even noticed. And somehow, your 40s are already approaching faster than expected. The scary part isn't working hard. The scary part is working hard for an entire decade only to realize most of the reward went toward maintaining the exact same pace of life. Nobody can make this decision for you. There's no perfect moment that suddenly appears and announces it's time to change the way you think about money. Life keeps moving forward, whether you're prepared or not. And maybe for the first time in years, you finally begin understanding that financial freedom is not the feeling of becoming richer than everyone else. Sometimes it's something much simpler than that. The ability to slow down without feeling afraid. Then you turn your phone screen off, sit inside the silence of your apartment close to midnight, and ask yourself a very small question you never seriously considered before. If you keep living exactly like this, what will your life actually look like 10 years from now?